The afternoon sun filtered through the large windows of Westfield Shopping Center, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Shoppers moved with purpose through the bustling corridors, their arms laden with bags from high-end boutiques and department stores. The air hummed with conversations, the clicking of heels, and the distant melody of fountain water cascading in the central atrium. Near the luxury cosmetics section of Nordstrom, a gentle soul named Emma carefully examined a display of lip balms. At 28, Emma had the kind of smile that could light up a room and eyes that sparkled with genuine curiosity about the world around her. Born with Down syndrome, she approached life with an openness and joy that many people spend their entire lives trying to recapture. Today, she wore her favorite purple sweater, the one her mother had knitted for her last Christmas, paired with comfortable jeans and sneakers that had seen countless adventures. Emma had saved money from her part-time job at the local library to buy a special lip balm as a gift for her sister's birthday. She held each tube carefully, reading the labels with the deliberate concentration she applied to everything she did. The vanilla scent caught her attention, and she smiled, remembering how much Sarah loved vanilla candles. "This one smells like cookies," she said softly to herself, her voice carrying the slight speech pattern that was part of who she was. She didn't notice the three young women who had positioned themselves near the perfume counter, their designer handbags and carefully applied makeup serving as armor in their daily battle to prove their worth through appearance and attitude. Madison, the apparent leader of the trio, stood with her arms crossed, her platinum blonde hair styled in perfect waves that had taken her 2 hours that morning. At 22, she carried herself with the kind of confidence that comes from never having been truly challenged by life's hardships. Her two companions, Brittany and Chloe, flanked her like eager disciples, their phones constantly in hand, ready to document any moment that might serve as social media content. "Oh my God, look at that," Madison whispered, her voice dripping with false concern as she nodded toward Emma. "Should someone like that even be shopping here alone?" Brittany, a redhead with sharp features that matched her sharp tongue, giggled behind her manicured hand. "I know, right? It's kind of sad. Where's her caretaker?" Emma, still focused on her careful selection, remained blissfully unaware of their cruel attention. She had found the perfect lip balm, vanilla-scented, in a pretty silver tube that would look lovely wrapped in tissue paper. As she reached for her small purse to count out her money, her elbow accidentally brushed against a display of sample perfumes, causing a few small bottles to rattle. The sound drew more attention from the mean-spirited trio, and Madison saw her opportunity for entertainment. "Excuse me," Madison called out in a voice loud enough to draw stares from other shoppers. "You need to be more careful. Those are expensive." Emma looked up, her expression immediately apologetic. "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." "Yeah, well, maybe you should shop somewhere more appropriate for your situation," Madison continued, her voice growing louder and more theatrical. "This isn't exactly the dollar store." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Her smile faltered, and she clutched her chosen lip balm closer to her chest. "I have money," she said quietly, her voice trembling slightly. "I work at the library. I save my money." Chloe, emboldened by Madison's cruelty, joined in. "Working at a library? What do you do? Put stickers on books?" The question came with a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "I help people find books they like," Emma replied with dignity that far exceeded her tormentor's maturity. "I know where everything is. People tell me I'm very helpful." "I'm sure they do, sweetie," Brittany said with mock sympathy. "But maybe you should stick to places that are more your speed." The commotion was beginning to draw attention from other shoppers, but rather than intervening, most people simply quickened their pace, uncomfortable with the situation, but unwilling to get involved. Emma's eyes began to well up with tears, not because she didn't understand what was happening, but because she understood it all too well. Standing at the far end of the cosmetics section, a man in a simple black t-shirt and well-worn jeans had been quietly observing the scene unfold. His dark hair was slightly tousled, as if he'd been running his hands through it, and his beard was neatly trimmed but not overly styled. He wore no jewelry except for a simple watch, and his sneakers looked like they'd walked many miles. To the casual observer, he might have been any ordinary shopper taking a break from his day. But Keanu Reeves was far from ordinary, though he'd spent most of his life trying to blend into the background of everyday moments like this one. He had come to the mall for a simple errand, picking up a gift for his assistant's daughter's graduation. He'd been standing near the men's cologne section when the cruel laughter first caught his attention. Now, watching Emma's quiet dignity in the face of such unnecessary cruelty, he felt something familiar stir in his chest. It was the same feeling he'd had countless times before when witnessing injustice, a quiet burning that demanded action. Madison, feeding off her friend's encouragement and the growing audience, decided to escalate her performance. "Look, I'm not trying to be mean," she said in a voice that suggested the exact opposite. "But maybe someone should call your parents or whoever takes care of you. You seem a little lost." Emma's tears finally began to fall, but she wiped them away with the back of her hand and straightened her shoulders. "I take care of myself," she said with a strength that should have shamed her tormentors. "I live in my own apartment. I cook my own dinner. I pay my own bills." "Really?" Madison's voice rose with theatrical disbelief. "And they just let you wander around by yourself? That seems irresponsible." It was then that Keanu decided he'd heard enough. He approached the group with the kind of calm, measured steps that suggested someone who had learned to move through the world with intention. His presence was quiet but unmistakable, the kind of energy that made people turn their heads without quite knowing why. "Excuse me," he said softly, positioning himself slightly between Emma and her tormentors. His voice carried the kind of authority that comes not from volume, but from certainty. "Is there a problem here?" Madison, still riding high on her cruel entertainment, barely glanced at the newcomer. "Nothing that concerns you," she said dismissively. "We were just trying to help this girl find her way to somewhere more appropriate." Keanu's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes grew harder. "Appropriate for what?" "Well," Brittany jumped in, eager to explain their perspective to this new audience member. "She's obviously, different, and this is a pretty upscale store. We were just suggesting that maybe she'd be more comfortable somewhere else." "Different how?" Keanu asked, his voice remaining perfectly level. The question seemed to stump them for a moment. Chloe tried to recover first. "Well, she has, special needs, Down syndrome or whatever. It's just that this place is kind of expensive and you assumed she couldn't afford to shop here because of her disability," Keanu finished, the statement hanging in the air like an indictment. Madison's confidence began to waver slightly, but she pressed on. "Look, we're not being mean. We're being realistic. People like her usually need supervision and—" "People like her," Keanu repeated, and the way he said it made the words sound as ugly as they were. "Tell me, what exactly do you think gives you the right to determine where another person should or shouldn't shop?" The man's calm intensity was beginning to make Madison uncomfortable, but she wasn't ready to back down in front of her friends and the growing crowd of onlookers. "Look, I don't know who you think you are, but I think I'm someone who believes that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect," Keanu interrupted gently, "regardless of their abilities, their appearance, or how much money they have in their wallet." He turned to Emma, who had been watching the exchange with wide eyes. "Hi," he said with a genuine smile that transformed his entire face. "I'm Keanu. What's your name?" "Emma," she replied softly, still clutching her lip balm. "Emma Rodriguez." "It's very nice to meet you, Emma Rodriguez. That's a beautiful name." His voice carried warmth that seemed to wrap around her like a protective blanket. "What are you shopping for today?" "It's for my sister," Emma explained, her voice growing stronger. "It's her birthday tomorrow, and she loves vanilla things. I found this lip balm that smells like vanilla cookies." "That sounds like a perfect gift," Keanu said with genuine enthusiasm. "Your sister is lucky to have someone who pays such careful attention to what makes her happy." Madison, watching this exchange and feeling the mood of the surrounding crowd shift against her, tried to regain control of the situation. "Look, this is all very sweet, but what?" Keanu turned back to her, and for the first time, his voice carried an edge. "But you're uncomfortable seeing someone with Down syndrome shopping in the same store as you?" But you think your assumption about her capabilities is more important than her actual independence and autonomy? That's not what I meant, Madison protested, but her voice lacked its earlier conviction. Then what did you mean? Keanu asked. Because from where I'm standing, it looked like three people were ganging up on one person for no reason other than their own entertainment. Brittany tried to come to Madison's defense. We were just concerned about her safety. Were you? Keanu's question was quiet but pointed. Because Emma seems perfectly capable of taking care of herself. She's shopping independently. She has her own money. She's making thoughtful choices about gifts for people she loves. What exactly were you concerned about? The silence that followed was deafening. Around them, other shoppers had stopped to watch the confrontation, and the expressions on their faces ranged from disapproval to outright disgust, all directed at Madison and her friends. I think, Keanu continued, his voice returning to its earlier gentleness, that maybe you three are the ones who need to find somewhere more appropriate to spend your time. Somewhere you can work on understanding that a person's worth isn't determined by their abilities or their differences, but by how they treat others. It was then that a young man with a Nordstrom name tag approached the group. Mr. Reeves? He said hesitantly. Is everything okay here? The name hit the three young women like a lightning bolt. Madison's face went completely white as the realization dawned on her. She had been arguing with, dismissing, and trying to lecture Keanu Reeves, one of the most beloved actors in Hollywood, known as much for his kindness and humility as for his film roles. Oh my God, Chloe whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. Brittany's phone, which had been poised to capture more of Emma's humiliation, suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in her trembling hands. Madison opened and closed her mouth several times, looking like a fish gasping for air. The confident, cruel persona she'd worn like armor just moments before crumbled completely, leaving behind a young woman who suddenly understood that her behavior had been witnessed not just by a crowd of strangers, but by someone whose opinion actually mattered to her. Mr. Reeves, Madison stammered. I didn't know. You didn't know what? Keanu asked quietly. You didn't know that your behavior was cruel regardless of who was watching? Emma, who had been following the conversation with growing confusion, tugged gently on Keanu's sleeve. Are you famous? She asked with the direct curiosity that characterized all her interactions. Keanu smiled down at her, and the genuine warmth of his expression was in stark contrast to the cool disappointment he'd shown Madison. Some people know my movies, he said simply, but that's not what's important here. What's important is that you were being treated unfairly, and that's never okay. You're in movies? Emma's eyes lit up with excitement. I love movies. What movies are you in? Well, Keanu said, clearly delighted by her enthusiasm. Have you seen any of the John Wick movies? Emma shook her head. I don't like scary movies. Do you do any happy movies? Keanu laughed, a genuine, delighted sound that seemed to fill the entire cosmetics section with warmth. I was in a movie called The Lake House once. It's a love story, and I did voice acting for a movie called Toy Story 4. Toy Story 4, Emma practically bounced with excitement. I love Toy Story. You were Duke Kaboom. That's right. Keanu's smile grew even wider. Canada's greatest stuntman. Kachiga, Emma said, mimicking Duke Kaboom's signature phrase, and Keanu laughed again. Meanwhile, Madison and her friends stood frozen, watching this easy, joyful interaction between Emma and one of Hollywood's most respected actors. The contrast between how naturally and kindly he spoke with Emma and how coldly he'd addressed them was not lost on any of them. Mr. Reeves, Madison tried again, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm so sorry. You didn't mean to be cruel to someone you thought was vulnerable? Keanu interrupted. His attention still partly focused on Emma, who was now telling him about her favorite Toy Story characters. Or you didn't mean to get caught? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Madison felt tears prick at her eyes, not tears of sadness, but tears of shame and recognition. For the first time in years, she was seeing her own behavior from the outside, and the view was horrifying. I don't know, she admitted, her voice breaking. I think I've become someone I don't like very much. It was the first honest thing she'd said all day, and Keanu seemed to recognize it. His expression softened slightly, though his disappointment remained clear. "The good news," he said quietly, "is that who you've become isn't who you have to stay. But that's going to require some honest reflection about why you thought it was acceptable to treat Emma the way you did." Emma, who had been listening to this exchange, stepped closer to Madison. Up close, Madison could see that Emma's eyes held no malice, no desire for revenge, only a kind of gentle sadness. "It's okay," Emma said softly. "Sometimes people are mean because they're scared or sad about something else. My mom taught me that." The simple wisdom of her words hit Madison like a physical blow. Here was this woman she'd tormented, offering her understanding and forgiveness that she absolutely didn't deserve. "Emma," Madison said, her voice thick with unshed tears, "I am so sorry. There's no excuse for how I treated you. None at all." Emma nodded solemnly. "Thank you for saying sorry. That was brave." Keanu watched this exchange with something approaching approval. "Emma," he said, "would you like me to help you pay for your sister's gift?" "Oh, no, thank you," Emma said quickly. "I have my own money. I saved it from working." She paused, then added with shy hope, "But would you maybe like to help me pick out wrapping paper? I want it to be really pretty." "I would be honored to help you pick out wrapping paper," Keanu said formally, offering her his arm like an old-fashioned gentleman. As they walked toward the gift wrap section, Emma chattering happily about her sister and her job at the library, Madison and her friends were left standing in the cosmetics section, surrounded by other shoppers who were no longer trying to hide their disapproving stares. "I think we should go," Brittany whispered. "Yeah," Chloe agreed, her earlier cruelty replaced by deep embarrassment. But Madison stood rooted to the spot, watching Keanu and Emma at the gift wrap display. She could see him listening intently as Emma explained the different ribbon options, treating her opinions with the same seriousness he might give to a director discussing a scene. There was no condescension, no performative kindness for the cameras, just genuine respect and friendship. "Madison, come on," Brittany urged. "People are staring." "Good," Madison said quietly. "They should stare. They should remember what we did here." She walked slowly toward the gift wrap section, her friends trailing uncertainly behind her. Keanu looked up as she approached, his expression neutral but not hostile. "Emma," Madison said, her voice steady despite her nerves, "I wanted to apologize again, and I wanted you to know that you were right. Your mom sounds very wise. I think I have been scared and sad about things, and I took it out on you, and that was wrong." Emma looked up from a roll of silver ribbon she'd been admiring. "What are you scared and sad about?" The directness of the question caught Madison off guard. She glanced at Keanu, who nodded encouragingly, then back at Emma's open, curious face. "I think." Madison struggled to find words for feelings she'd never really examined before. "I think I'm scared that I'm not as special as I want to be. And I think I'm sad because I don't have very many real friends. So I try to make myself feel better by making other people feel worse. And that's terrible." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "That does sound sad, but you know what? You seem like you could be a good friend if you tried. You just have to practice being nice instead of practicing being mean." The simple wisdom of it, the idea that kindness was something you could practice, like playing piano or riding a bike, struck Madison as both profound and hopeful. "Would you?" Madison hesitated, then forced herself to continue. "Would you let me buy your sister's gift as an apology?" Emma considered this seriously. "That's very nice," she said finally, "but I like buying my own presents for people. It makes me feel proud, but maybe you could help me carry everything to the car? My mom is picking me up in an hour." "I would like that very much," Madison said, and meant it. Keanu watched this exchange with growing approval. "Emma," he said, "you're one of the wisest people I've ever met." "Thank you," Emma said with a pleased smile. "My mom says wisdom is just paying attention to how people feel and trying to help them feel better." "Your mom is absolutely right," Keanu agreed. He looked at Madison. "And Emma just demonstrated more wisdom and kindness in 5 minutes than most people show in a lifetime." Madison nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. As they finished selecting the perfect wrapping paper, silver with small stars, which Emma decided looked elegant enough for her sister but fun enough to show personality, more people began to recognize Keanu. But instead of the usual requests for selfies and autographs, the small crowd that gathered seemed content to simply observe this beautiful interaction. A mother with her young daughter whispered to her child, "See how kind that man is being? That's how we should treat everyone we meet." An elderly man nodded approvingly as he watched Keanu help Emma calculate how much ribbon she would need. "That's a good man," he told his wife. "Famous or not, that's a good man." When they reached the checkout counter, the young cashier recognized both the situation and the customer. "Everything's on the house today," she said with a smile. "That's very kind," Keanu said, "but Emma specifically wanted to buy this with her own money. That's important to her independence and dignity." The cashier nodded understandingly and processed Emma's payment with the same courtesy she would show any customer. Emma carefully counted out her bills, double-checked her change, and tucked her receipt into her purse with the satisfied air of someone who had accomplished exactly what they set out to do. As they walked toward the mall's main corridor, Madison carrying Emma's shopping bag as promised, Emma turned to Keanu with a serious expression. "Thank you for helping me," she said. "Those girls were being mean, and I was starting to feel really sad, but you made them stop, and you made me feel better. You didn't need me to make you feel better." Keanu replied gently, "You handled yourself with more grace and dignity than anyone should have to. I just helped level the playing field a little." "What does that mean?" Emma asked. "It means that sometimes, when people are being unfair, it helps to have someone stand beside you," Keanu explained. "Not to fight your battles for you, but to remind everyone involved that you deserve respect." Emma nodded thoughtfully. "Like how my mom stands beside me when I have to talk to doctors or landlords or people who don't think I can understand things." "Exactly like that," Keanu confirmed. "Your mom sounds like a very special person." "She is," Emma said with absolute certainty. "She taught me that everyone has something special about them, even people who are mean. She says mean people just haven't figured out what their special thing is yet." Madison, who had been listening to this conversation while carrying Emma's bag, felt fresh tears spring to her eyes. The generosity of spirit that Emma continued to show, even after the way she'd been treated, was humbling beyond words. They reached the central atrium, where Emma's mother would be picking her up. The fountain tinkled cheerfully in the background, and afternoon shoppers moved past in both directions, most of them completely unaware of the small drama that had played out in the cosmetics section. "Emma," Keanu said, pulling out his phone, "would it be okay if I gave you my publicist's contact information? If you ever want tickets to a movie premiere or if you'd like to visit a movie set, I'd be happy to arrange that." Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? Could my sister come too?" "Of course," Keanu said with a smile. "Anyone who matters to you would be welcome." As he programmed the contact information into Emma's phone, which she handled with the careful competence of someone who had fought for the right to manage her own affairs, Madison found herself struggling with an unfamiliar feeling. It took her several minutes to recognize it as genuine remorse. "Emma," she said quietly, "I want you to know that meeting you today changed something in me. I don't think I'll ever forget how kind you were, even when I didn't deserve it." Emma looked at her seriously. "Being kind is always the right choice," she said, "even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." "I'm going to try to remember that," Madison promised. "Good," Emma said with a decisive nod. "And if you forget sometimes, that's okay too. You can always start being kind again the next day." "That's what my mom says." A car honked gently from the pickup area, and Emma waved excitedly. "That's my mom!" As she gathered her purchases, Emma turned back to both Keanu and Madison. "Thank you for helping me today," she said to Keanu. "And thank you for saying sorry," she said to Madison. "I hope you have a really good rest of your day." She headed toward the car with the confident stride of someone who knew exactly where she belonged in the world. Through the large windows, they could see her greeting her mother with an enthusiastic hug and immediately launching into what was clearly an animated retelling of her adventure. Keanu and Madison stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Emma's joyful reunion. "She's extraordinary," Madison said finally. "She is," Keanu agreed. "But you know what? So are most people, once you take the time to see them as they really are, instead of as you assume they are. Madison nodded, absorbing this wisdom. Mr. Reeves, can I ask you something? Of course. How do you do it? How do you stay so kind when there's so much cruelty in the world? Keanu considered the question seriously. I think, he said slowly, it's because I've learned that kindness isn't about other people deserving it. It's about who I want to be in the world. Every interaction is a choice about what kind of person I'm going to be in that moment. And you choose kindness. I try to, Keanu said. I don't always succeed, but I try to remember that everyone I meet is fighting battles I know nothing about. Everyone is carrying pain and hope and dreams and fears that I can't see. So the least I can do is treat them with the respect I'd want if our positions were reversed. Madison felt something shift inside her chest, a loosening of something hard and bitter that she'd been carrying for so long she'd forgotten it wasn't part of her natural state. I want to be different, she said quietly. I want to be better. Then you will be, Keanu said with certainty. The fact that you want to change is the hardest part. Everything else is just practice. As they parted ways, Keanu heading toward the parking garage and walking slowly back to where her friends waited, both carried with them the memory of Emma's gracious strength and the reminder that every moment offers a choice between cruelty and kindness. Over the following weeks, Madison found herself thinking often about that afternoon in the mall. She began to notice her own behavior patterns, the way she automatically looked for flaws in others to distract from her own insecurities. She started volunteering at a local literacy program, inspired partly by Emma's work at the library and partly by a genuine desire to contribute something positive to the world. Brittany and Chloe, shaken by the incident and Madison's subsequent transformation, began their own journeys of self-reflection. The friend group that had bonded over shared cruelty slowly evolved into something healthier, or in some cases, simply dissolved as they outgrew the need to tear others down to build themselves up. Emma continued her life much as she always had, working at the library, caring for herself independently, and approaching each day with the same generous spirit that had transformed a stranger's cruelty into an opportunity for growth and understanding. And Keanu Reeves, true to his word, sent Emma and her sister tickets to the premiere of his next film. The photo of them on the red carpet, Emma radiant in a purple dress that matched her favorite sweater, her sister glowing with pride beside her, became one of the most shared images on social media that week, though not because of the celebrity who posed with them. People shared it because something in Emma's joy and dignity reminded them of what was possible when we choose to see the extraordinary in the ordinary, the sacred in the everyday, and the beautiful in the different. In a world that often feels divided by differences, Emma Rodriguez in One Afternoon in a Shopping Mall served as a reminder that kindness, once practiced, becomes contagious. That dignity, once recognized, becomes impossible to ignore, and that sometimes the most profound changes begin with the simple decision to treat another person as if they matter. Because they do, they all do, and in the end, that's the only truth that really matters.